All right, YouTube. So we're back again. I said I was going to try to get the OMP Hobby S720 Sport and then the T720 Trainer. I was going to try to get that to work with DSMX, and I found out that it is capable of running on SBus through this connector. That's wrong. I got this from the manufacturer. This is where you plug in for SBus, and then DSMX or DSM2, DSMX can go there evidently. And so what I did was they sent me this thing to try, and I think it's like maybe 10 bucks or something. It's really cheap. But look at that little turd. Isn't that awesome? Integral antenna. You can see the antenna on that multi-layer board there. And the silicone trace, or there, you can see it right there. That's pretty sweet. So anyway, that, you can see where I plugged it in. I plugged it into that last terminal, which is labeled as connector 3 on my picture up here. It was supposed to be on connector 2 according to the manufacturer, but it didn't fit. So anyway, and it is really challenging to get in the T720. But I just wanted to show you how I did it on this. And I used a pair of bent tip forceps. So that makes it way easier to get these things manipulated. You got to be careful when you grab stuff because it'll break. And then I stuffed it into this little pocket back here. Bear in mind that there is a servo in there, so you need to be careful about getting in and interfering with the servo play. Okay. So that being understood, once you put that thing in, you'll be amazed how easy it is. And then this is the packaging it came in. It came in a box with paper. And I unfolded the paper and this thing popped out and it was like the size of a penny, and I'm thinking, geez, I almost lost it. So obviously this is the stock controller, and so we're going to be using instead the Jumper T8 SG Plus. There's a bunch of different open source transmitters you can set up, but I'm going to go through the setup for this. I'll show you what I did first, and then I'll show you, I mean, it almost immediately works. It's really cool. So basically on the Jumper, if you're not familiar with it, you use the enter and the kind of like the return, and then there's arrows, but the arrows don't always navigate through. So I made a model, it's called the S720, and I set up a timer that counts down. It clears with this switch, and then it just runs. And then I have a throttle cut here, but you got to be careful because that throttle cut only partially works. So like it also holds the throttle. So if you move it up and you do it, it'll leave it at 66 even though you put the stick down. So I just wanted to warn you about that. But if you're down when you start and you lock it, then it'll keep it at minus 100. Okay, so I'll show you how I set this up, and then I also set up a rudder to aileron mix. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to walk into model menu, and you're going to go to model setup, and then you're going to set up your new model. So you'll go load, and then you'll scroll down to one that says none. In my case, I'm going to scroll to the one that it says 720. I'm going to press the enter key, and then I'm going to go into the model name, and you just scroll through, and when you're done, you can press done, and you press this enter key to accept. You want to change the icon, you can. I have it set to plain.bmp. The model type, you do have to set that to plain. Okay, it can also be heli and multi-rotor. And the update rate of the camera, I apologize about that, it's just the way it goes. The TX power was set to 10 milliwatts, and that got changed after I set up the type. So PPM in is none. I have it set to SFHSS, and then you can reinitialize or bind, or excuse me, you can reinitialize, but I'm not going to do that. You would press the down arrow to walk to that, and then you press enter and it'll rebind. But you don't have to do that. It'll pretty much just work right away. And then the fixed ID I left at default, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the number of channels I left at 8, and I leave the GUI at advanced. The GUI, of course, has to do with the way everything lays out on this screen. So like if you want to eliminate one of the timers, you can do that. So my camera crew is going to kindly update me if I have a glare on the screen. So we're going to go back in. We're going to go to transmitter menu, and, or excuse me, actually we're going to go back to the model menu. We're going to go back to mixers, and then we're just going to go through it. Now it'll start with, being that it's a plane, it's going to be Aileron simple, elevator simple, throttle simple, and rudder simple. I changed mine to complex, so you press the down arrow to walk over, which is totally dumb, but that's just part of the open source. Press enter, and then I set it to complex. Mixers is 1, meaning there's nothing mixed with this channel. And remember, when you mix on this, you're mixing into the channel that you're working on. So the output of the mix is going to be on channel 1 in this case, if you were doing that. So you'll notice there's nothing mixed, even though the ailerons to rudder are mixed. That goes in the rudder because the rudder is the output, even though the ailerons are controlling it. So I'll show you that later. Page 1, switch none. The mux is replace, aileron, and then the expo. That's the only thing I changed. So I press enter there, and then you have to scroll through your different choices. I think symmetrical, it might be like positive by default. I go to symmetrical, and then I change the value to whatever I want. I found that 50 is a good starting point. That helps with kind of the cheaper Hall effects and gimbals on these compared to your higher class, like your DX18, like I'm used to. And then it's a humongous improvement over this thing, okay? So we'll just use that. Obviously, Expo doesn't exist. I do not believe in rates. I want full output when I move the stick to the full position. So if you want to change the rate, just make a different value. Okay, so we're saving that. Walk down to save and press enter. If you do not save, nothing you did in that whole menu will be saved. Okay, then under elevator, we change that to complex and the exact same thing. The only difference is Expo might be a little bit different for your taste. And then none of those other things I mess with, okay? Same thing with throttle, complex. Now, why did I do that? Because I need to be able to, I wanted to set up a throttle cut. So there might be a better way of doing this, but what I do is I set it to switch H, so it mimics what I do on my DX18. And now when you move that, it'll wake up the switch, so you got to be careful what you do. So if you move the switch right now, it's going to set it to that switch. And then I use the enter key to toggle between, there's like an exclamation point that comes at the beginning, and that'll be like the opposite, okay? So then the mux is replaced and the source is throttle, the expo is 0, except it's not, it's actually something. See expo, if I walk over to negative, I have it set to 40. Now, why do I want that? When I give throttle, I want to soften the stick down at the bottom. Now, the reason I do that is just because of the cheap setup. So it makes it feel more expensive because I have more control at the bottom of the stick. So that being said, we're going to save that. We're going to save it again. And then the rudder, this one's complex as well. And the reason it's complex is because there's 2 mixes and I want expo. So on page 1 of the 2, we're going to just say switch none, replace for the mux. The source is rudder and the expo is going to be 50 in this case. It's symmetrical. Okay, so symmetrical, and then we'll save, and then you go down to page, and you move over to page 2, and you'll notice it's a different line. The switch is none. I could set that to a switch so you could turn this function on and off. I'm not going to mess with that. And then the mux is to add the control, and the source of the control adding is this. So that's going to mix in the controls, and you see that's the actual rudder output. So as I move this, going to move that, and as I move this, it's also going to move that, okay? And then that's a curve 1-to-1. You can change that to something else if you want, and then the scale is 20, meaning that 20% of the output from the ailerons is going to be translated into the rudder movement, and then none of the rest is set up. So then save, and then I set up channel 5 to simple and channel 6 to simple. And that's because on channel 5, that's like your auto leveling gyro on and off. So ironically enough, I don't fly it with the gyro on at all, hardly right now, which is super nice. And then I tried setting up something here and it didn't work. So that actually reminds me, if you want to clear one out, you can just walk this down to none and then save, and then that'll clear that virtual channel back out. Okay, so now to walk back out, you just hit the back button and the back button and the back button. And you can see everything is running. The timer is still counting. I set this to clear, so we'll show you that real quick. Again, guys, I don't know much about these jumper or open source, so I'm just learning this as I go, so I'm just showing you what I did. Timers, I set countdown proportional, or countdown prop. And then it's the the control is throttle. The reset switch is up here at C. And then the start time is 10. And then I have nothing set to the rest of the stopwatch. So I'm going to go back. But you'll notice when you give it throttle, if you set that, that would start counting. So you could keep a counter that would tell you how long you've been flying. And then you would have a counter that's just simply counting down. I prefer the 1 out timer on Spectrum. And that just basically, as soon as you give it throttle over 25%, it starts your timer. So, full disclosure, I broke this landing gear. Actually, I think that happened. Was that when the camera crew crashed it?
Maybe.
Yeah,
possibly.
My camera crew crashed it. It was off camera. But anyway, so we have this on. We have the throttle position is to minus 100%, and our throttle cut is on because you'll notice that doesn't change. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't change. So that's a good safety technique that you can get in the habit of doing. I've got 2 batteries here. One says T720 and one says S720. The other way you can tell is there's no Velcro on the 720. Not that it matters. But what we're going to do is we'll just go ahead and hold this more or less in a level position. And we will go ahead and power it up. Wait for a couple of beeps. And these things start up really fast. And you'll notice what I'm going to do with the battery. I'm just going to stick it in there and just kind of curl the wires so that they're controlled and neat. And then I can stick the lid on. And you guys are just going to love how easy this is. See how it's not doing anything yet? So now watch this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk in, model menu, model setup, and then this, whoops, reinitialize, and it's working. That's all you have to do if it loses its bind. Okay, I don't know why it would lose its bind, but can we show them from this angle? I'm going to show them the controls that we set up. So obviously you have aileron as usual. Okay, you have rudder as usual, elevator as usual. And then we have the throttle cut is currently on. We're just going to test it. It is working. Okay, now with throttle cut off, we'll go ahead and, okay, so we'll set throttle cut back on and test it. So everything's set there. So now the only thing I notice is that my ailerons are not operating the rudder. So I'm going to go in and find out what I did wrong. So I'll press enter, walk into the model menu, go to mixers. I'm going to go back to rudder, complex. Okay, so it looks like replace, rudder expo. So as I move this, the rudder moves, that's good. So I'm going to go back to page 2. So there's page 2, switch, add rudder 1-to-1. Scale is 20. Interesting. So I'm going to change this to a lot more, so maybe I just can't see it. See how it's 92? I'm going to set it to like 85, and then I'm going to go to save. And then, yeah, see, it's not moving. So we'll pause it and tell you when we figure it out.
Okay.
All right, guys, so I made a stupid mistake, and I'll show you what my stupid mistake was. I deleted that virtual port, or that virtual channel, but that virtual channel was made for the mix. So it must have been autonomous. So I'm going to go to complex. Switch will be none. Source is going to be aileron. And now look what happens. It immediately ties the two together, just like what we thought we had set up, which is pretty cool. So now we can go back to the end and go to save and press enter. And then if we walk back up, we can fiddle with our settings under rudder. So under rudder, we'll walk back in, whoops, to the complex one. Then you go in there, we'll go to page 2, and then this scale, let's change it like way high so you can see what I'm talking about. See how it's not changing yet? Watch what happens when I save. See how much change it is now? So that's a lot more rudder tie than was before. Remember, the rudder's over here. This aileron is just tied. So when we roll the airplane, it'll do a coordinated turn automatically. So I'm going to go back into that. I'm going to go back to page 2.
And I'm gonna walk back down to 86, and I found it to work pretty good in the like the lower numbers, like maybe 25. So I'm gonna save it, and then I'm gonna actually go back in, and I'm gonna show you on page 2, I can make a switch that will turn that on and off. So I'll switch it to switch A1, and then I think I can reverse that. So now I'm gonna go back up to save, and press enter. Now watch this. See, nothing's happening. See how it's tied now? And when I flip the switch to the middle, it shuts it off. That's a 3-position switch, so the middle position is gonna shut off the mix. And the top position or the bottom position is gonna keep it working, okay? See how that works, guys? So, that should be everything. So the next thing we're gonna do is we'll show you it flying. And the cool part of this is I can unplug it from that plane and I can stick it in that plane, and we'll actually show you that at the very end. So we'll come right back when we're ready to fly. Okay, so we're gonna fly it with the jumper now, and just keep in mind, no stabilization or auto level. Well, there's stabilization, but no auto leveling. There's auto leveling. I have that set to switch G, okay? So we're gonna take off without it. And you guys remember my concerns with the S720 were that it was like super hokey on the elevator. So let's just show you how well it works now. See how gorgeous that is now? Look how smooth it is. And just look how gorgeous it is now. Now, I'd be lying if I said this plane wasn't a little bit on the touchy side, but that's kind of the design of the plane. And just, guys, look how smooth it is. It's just so gorgeously easy to control. It looks good, it flies good, it's pretty solid. It's actually remarkably calm right now too, which is strange. Okay, let's do an inside out loop here. See the power, guys? It'll just do those all day long. Look at this. If you can do an inside loop, that means you have power. But this is why Expo is so gorgeous, because I mean, just look how good this thing is flying compared to what it had been. I would have never had the confidence to bring it that close to the ground before. And it would have been doing this, like this, every time I would let off. Now, how does this compare to some of the other planes I've been reviewing? With this controller, by far the best. Now, I suspect that the aerodynamic features or character traits of the T720 are just going to make it gorgeous. You guys hear that bouncy bounce? That was a grass landing for you guys at home. Throttle cut's on and tested. We'll pause it.
Okay.
I do this to show you that it can fly slow now. I don't feel like I'm always needing to give it like so much throttle to keep it doing what I want it to do. Now, does it fly really slow? Not especially. It's not bad though. You'll still get kind of some hokey elevator play in there once in a while. I think mostly it's just the characteristics of this airplane. But I mean, for not having auto leveling. Okay, so let's do the auto leveling. There's your auto leveling, okay? So we'll come back down here. So we're in auto leveling now. So like when I let go of the controls, it's still got that wonkiness to it. But the thing is, I can overwhelm that control.
And I'll show you the controls without. Okay, so this has still got auto leveling. So now that we're on the jumper, you can see how close I got to that bucket, guys. I was right there. And see, now we're up against the limits of the small servos. And when you get into those small servos, those micro servos are only ever going to have so much resolution no matter what you do. And no matter how expensive they really are, let's just be honest. Okay, that was supposed to be a stall turn. Didn't have enough of rudder authority. I've been getting about 10 minutes worth of flight time without too much trouble. And that's if I'm really pushing it. But the little brushless motors on these things are awesome. And just look how much better this is. It's like a night and day difference. I don't do a lot of upside down flight, guys. It's just not my thing. But this plane can do it all day long. It's just so solid in the air. And with the jumper, it just makes this plane. Set up that little dinky coordinated rudder turn makes such a huge difference, folks. Now let's show you what it looks like without the coordinated turns, okay? Some of you are gonna like it better on a 3D plane, so I've turned that off. I flipped the A switch. Tighter, crisper rolls. So when you wanna do a nice tight roll like that, of course you'd wanna flip your switch, but you still have full rudder impact. So you're not giving up anything. Nothing at all. Getting toward the end of the battery life here. See if we can just do this a few times just to really, really test it. Okay, so that rudder tie is out, so we'll do... You can even see the wings bending now, which is pretty cool. I'm surprised I haven't actually ripped the wings out yet. I did not tape these wings on the T. Okay, so let's do a landing with the auto leveling for assistance. Okay, I had that pointed downhill pretty good. Okay, here we go. We're gonna come into a turn. Here we go. I don't want to chase it. I'll come back around. You'll notice the auto leveling is undermining my ability. I've got it shut off now. I want to slow this plane down, so look what I do. I'll kick it with the rudder, and then I'll use contrary ailerons to slow the plane down. You see how I do that, guys, without flaps? Man, it looks so much better. I mean, it's like night and day. Makes me want to put flaps on this thing, but I'm not going to do it. The flaps, if you could do flaperons on this thing, it would be pretty sweet. To be honest, it'd be really sweet because they'd be huge and they'd be full-length flaperons. They'd work really nicely on this plane, on this type of airframe. Okay, auto leveling. Okay, so there's our nice simple landing. We're gonna do a takeoff again. Really taxing the battery now out of the safe auto leveling stuff. It's not safe, guys. Safe is a patented technology owned by Verizon Bobby's brother. Stands for Sensor Aided Flight Envelope, which is based on AS3X. This is not. This is a 6-axis gyro system. Is this one the X Pilot? I forget.
No, I think that was the
Here we go.
the F22.
Our mail carrier is here. Our poor mail carrier. She has to come to our house like almost every day with black garbage bags. She's pretty good to us though. Really good to us. Okay. I've got my tie back on the rudder to ailerons. Man, I got some wind there. Did you see that? Okay, so throttle cut's on and tested. So now what we're gonna do is, this battery is pretty much dead. So I'm going to, we've been flying for like 13 and a half minutes or so. So we're gonna go ahead and switch this into we're gonna take the controller out of it, the little SBus adapter, and we're gonna put it into the T720 and show you how well that performs with all the same setup.
Okay.
All right guys, so we're gonna pop out this battery. This is one of the 300 milliamp hour, 720, the S720 pack. So we're just test the voltage here. Show you how much we consumed. So we're down to 7.36. So yeah, so we're about right. So we were running it, we ran it down right where it needed to be. And we ran for more than 10 minutes of good flying. It wasn't super lazy flying and it wasn't super aggressive flying either. So while we're between planes, I'm just gonna turn this off. Okay, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and just so you can see that the voltage is good before we get into this. We'll go ahead and test the voltage on the second pack. This one's the one we're gonna use in the 720. Looks like we're 8.35. So 4.17 and 4.18. Okay, so we've got a little bit of bleed off while it's been sitting. And then on this one, you gotta lift up the bill and then roll it out. And otherwise you'll break off that tab. So we're just gonna give them a look down in there. You guys see where that board is? Yeah, right. We have to get all the way back to that thing, right there, which is the furthest back connector on the left side of the airplane, right here. So why do I have this flashlight? Well, this flashlight, I happen to do it in the evening. So what I did was I turned on the flashlight like this, and I held it up against the phone, and that made it to where it would glow. And so I could see in there. And you'll notice those pins, those connectors, we're not very happy with this guy. So we're gonna see if we can get lucky and get it moved from this plane to this plane. And from this plane to this plane, and then it's probably gonna stay there, I'm guessing. I really like this feature. It makes this plane for me. To be honest with you, it should have it in it to begin with, but that's just between you and me. So the manufacturer has me review these things, and to be honest with you, I'm going to probably recommend that they just include it, but who knows? They probably won't. I think they're only asking like $10 for it. And to be honest with you, the cool thing is, if you have a jumper, you can fly so many different aircraft. I mean, all these planes that I have are DSMX. You can set them up, but I'll tell you what, if you're a new pilot, don't get the jumper. You got to know what you're doing. It's going to take you a while to get used to stuff. Just get something easy to program. And the Spectrum stuff is a lot more intuitive. That's from working outside, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, so we've got our forceps. This, you can see in this drawing, we want the relief portion. See this, guys? See how there's kind of like a deeper portion of this plug?
Wait, hold
and then there's two little sliders on the sides, and then a little detent here. You want that detent to go into the inside of the plane, so it'll go like this. I hope that makes sense. And then the way I'm going to hold this is going to be a cluster, so like my camera crew is going to do her best to show you, but to be perfectly honest, this is kind of like filming a colonoscopy. You're not going to see it except for on the camera. So there's this. And then I'm just going to try, if you want to film over my right shoulder, you might be able to see it. Okay, so we're just going to try to thread the needle here. This is bad enough without trying to film, you know?
Okay, so I'm in the hole. I just am not pressed all the way down. So now I am going to do that. Guys, if you're doing this to your first plane, I'm really sorry because this is a little bit challenging. And I want to be able to help you to make it easy, but let's just be real. It's not easy to do this because you can't, to my knowledge, I don't believe you can pull this board out. You see, it's mounted in here. And wouldn't that be hilarious if it just lifted right out? See, it's all mounted, guys. There's nowhere to go. There's no screws to undo that I can find. So let's plug in a battery and see if it worked. So we're going to turn this jumper on. We're going to grab the correct battery pack. LiPo, 300 milliamp 2S pack. We're just going to drop the plane on the ground and try to break it. And it is powered up. So as you can see, there's a red light on it. See the red light, folks? Look. Mm-hmm. It's already working. So that's sweet. So that means that you see where I chose to stick that was just kind of vertical, because I have no interest in trying to tuck that anywhere else. I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and we'll see if I can get the canopy to drop down in as expected. The hood, canopy, whatever this thing is. I need to resituate the battery cables just a little bit to make everything fit. It's one thing I noticed about this particular aircraft is that it's not very spacious. Now let's test our controls. Safe or safety. Doesn't seem to do anything. Throttle cut is engaged. We'll disengage it. There's your throttle. We have rudder. We have ailerons with rudder tie going the correct direction. Rolling, going up and down. That's awesome. And look what I did to the elevator. When I dropped it, it popped that. So you'll want to check that if you drop it. It was split, so it would have been making the plane roll. Almost like a telebomb. So everything is working except for auto leveling is on. Okay, let's go try it. I think what's going on here is that there is a certain amount of auto leveling that's being done. See that, how it relaxes? Now it's going to auto level. I think it must have some sort of a delay. So if you wanted to change that, what you'd have to do is you'd have to set up probably a 3-position switch for that channel, which in our case is channel 5. So let's get outside and see how this thing does. Okay, so we're going to fly the T720 trainer with the jumper T8 SG Plus. Oh, goodness gracious. That was not so good. What the heck happened?
Is your throttle cut?
No, look at the controls.
Oh.
Look what happened. Isn't that bizarre?
That's probably not very effective.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Sorry, guys. Okay, we'll try again here in a second. Let's make sure everything is working properly first. Throttle cut's off. Okay, the elevator's not moving. Elevator's going the right direction. So I don't know, maybe I just didn't throw it hard enough. Maybe the trim is way off too. Oh, there we go. Trim, guys. It's just trim, folks. I am going to trim it as soon as I get going the right direction. Sorry about the sun, honey. Okay, so I'm going to put on the... We have quite a bit of rudder trim issue right now. Kind of weird when I trim that rudder, I swear it went the wrong way.
The yaw is correct. The yaw is definitely going the right way. My mix is still set up right. Okay, now remember, I don't have any of the auto leveling turned on right now. Now it's on, so let's see how it does. Got the auto leveling on, so when I let go of the sticks, it's wanting to roll a little bit. There we go. A little bit of yaw quick. Flying really good with the auto leveling on. Now let's shut that back off. Nice little stall turn. See how it's just really, really, really wanting to turn on me. I don't understand that issue. It's like a mechanical trim issue, except there's no mechanical trim on this. Let's try doing some inside loops here. A little bit heavier aircraft. Ooh, not quite enough. There's too much down thrust. That's what it is. There's a down thrust angle. Duh. That's why it shot into the ground. But it's still wanting to yaw to the, it's still wanting to yaw. Maybe I need to set the gyros again. Let's catch it. That was easy. Do a quick visual inspection. Everything seems to be correct there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys the rudder. Okay. Okay, so we're going to set that. Camera crew, can you put your feet here so that it stays level? Okay, put your feet tight together so it holds. Okay. I think that's the way you retrain the... Everything seems to be working. It's just kind of a weird trim issue. See that? What the heck was that? Did you see it? All of a sudden the rudder seems to be moving more. See that? Okay, let's take back off and see what happens. You ready, camera crew?
Yep.
Throttle cuts off. There's some rudder action. And this is out of the auto leveling mode here. Looks pretty awesome. Always here when you give the throttle, they've got the braking turned on that brushless motor. So as a result, man, you see how much it's kicking? That's just from the rudder, from the trim issue. The jumper makes this thing better, but it makes a much bigger improvement on the S720. This thing did better than the S720 with the stock radio configuration, just the cheapy one that came in the ready to fly. But I would say that this jumper is still a big improvement on flight characteristics.
The only thing I'm not sure about is that rudder trim, and to be honest with you, there might be something else going on. I just got to work it out, figure out what's going on. But I mean, just look at the precision of control, folks. It's like, it's just a different plane altogether. Now, full disclosure, it's less windy today than it was when we did both of our maidens, right?
Mm.
And that does make a difference, folks. A big difference. If you don't already know that, which you probably do, you're probably kind of screaming that at the TV or the cell phone or the tablet or whatever it is you watch this stuff on. Boy, if I could just work out that trimming issue, I would be thrilled with the way this is flying. But I just don't know that I have enough trim output. There's also sub trim that you can set up. Let's see if we can show the people that real quick. A sub trim would be necessary on a plane like this, just for the fact that, okay, let's come over here so they can see. So if we wanted to trim this all the way over, see how it starts moving further? That's so weird. But then the ailerons needed trimmed a little bit. So if I press the enter, I go into the model menu, I go to mixers. If I go to aileron instead of the complex, I believe you can change the scale and you can do a sub trim right there. Okay, so under rudder, you can do a sub trim. Now keep in mind, even, see, I can't even tell which direction it's wanting to favor. See which way it's going there? So the positive puts it that way. See, like I said, you're not going to have a ton of resolution on those little cheapy servos. When they're super small like that, there's just only so many teeth you can fit into a small space like that. So I did the sub trim. Let's see how it performs now. Oh yeah, straight as an arrow. Just keep in mind, even sub trim does not give you more throw on the servo. So just because you set it so it'll go straight, you still have lost whatever percentage you just gave up in your sub trim, which is unfortunate but true. Should I dive bomb the cat?
No.
So the other day it was Christmas morning, and good old cat buddy here brought us a snack. It was delicious. Our cat is like a dog, and when I say our cat, I mean it's more like we're his people, because he adopted us, not the other way around. And dog cats are awesome because they play like dogs, but they're cats, so you don't have to do anything to take care of them. They just take care of themselves. And this cat is definitely a dog cat. Did you guys like that touch and go? I did. So what do you think, camera crew? Even though you feel crappy, do you see the improvement, or is it just in my head?
No, it's better.
I don't feel like the rudder is as effective as it should be right now. Like there's either something I screwed up on the setup, or there's actually an issue with the servo. And if that's the case, I apologize, jumper fans. And that's the other thing too I was gonna say, is I figured there'd be so many resources for me on YouTube for jumpers. I have been a little bit disappointed in that.
I don't know if the viewers at home can hear all the guns going off in the background.
I don't know. It's crazy.
It's like from 3 different directions. I love it. I hate it when I get a gust and I'm trying to do one of those close passes. The gust comes from the tail of the plane, so you kind of at the mercy of the wind. Okay, guys. The T720 with the jumper, close second. The S720 with the jumper takes the prize between these two. Now, it is a more expensive plane by like 10 bucks or something, but when you're talking about 10 bucks on an airplane like this, it just doesn't even matter, you know? Like 10 bucks between 2 different models, I don't even register on the scale for that, you know? Now, 200 bucks, yes, that registers. But when you're talking about a $100 plane compared to a $110 plane, or, you know, $160 plane instead of $170, it doesn't even really make a difference. So to be honest with you, having the ability to bind this up with a, you know, some sort of an open source transmitter that's going to do the SFHSS protocol is awesome. If it did DSMX, I would be way happier. And yes, there is supposed to be a way, but I do not have one of the serial receivers to try that with. So one of these days, if I get one, I'll try it and see how it performs. Also, I believe they're bigger. This one is so small. It just doesn't even add any weight at all. I mean, it's probably like 2 grams, if that. So very cool, definitely worth a shot. If you don't have a jumper, like I said, if you're new to flying, you may not want to get a jumper right away, but it's definitely cool. If you guys have another transmitter, you've kind of learned how the channel's set up and reversing and mixing and different things like that, the jumper is a really nice utility to have for some of the different brands that maybe you don't natively use. For me, it's usually Spectrum, and then this gives me all the other varieties because this has a multi-protocol setup on it. And yes, you can add additional setups. So if you get some new protocol, and yes, there are firmware updates that come out periodically for this. So just check on the website at Deviation. I believe it's deviation.com or org or something like that. Just look it up, you'll find it. Thanks guys for watching. Come back for more action. We have tons of it coming, and so much that my camera crew is almost about to mutiny, and so I gotta probably do something nice for her so she doesn't.